the words of Jesus, "Follow me," had life-changing impact on him. Dear friends, today's Gospel narrates the vocation story of Levi. He is also known as Matthew in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 9 verses 9 to 13. In the very first verse of this chapter, that is, the second chapter, Mark informs us that Jesus is at Capernaum. Now, knowing the city of Capernaum may help us to know the life and importance of the call of Matthew or Levi. Capernaum was at a strategic location where many travelers passed through that way, because it was at the land route which connected Europe to Africa. Naturally, when there are more travelers, there would be more business and hence more tax. Since Capernaum was a frontier town, it may have been a customs center, and also we can imagine Levi may have also been collecting import and export taxes from the merchant. It was in this strategic location Levi was collecting taxes. We must also remind ourselves that he was not a powerful person like Zacchaeus, because Zacchaeus was a chief of tax collectors and was at the service of Romans. Despite being only a regular tax collector, yet Levi was despised by the public due to his occupation and the associated social shame. The main reason why the public detested tax collectors was that they were accused of taking more money than the people were required to pay in taxes. However, we cannot assume that every tax collector was a fraud. We must also keep in mind that education was scarce, so people might not have realized how much they owed and might have claimed that all tax collectors were collecting more money. Today's passage narrates that Jesus was walking along the sea, and there he finds Levi at his table. He is one of those apostles who is directly called by Jesus. Jesus, as he was walking along the sea, finds Levi and directly walks into his life and transforms his life itself. For our better understanding, we can also read the passage of Zacchaeus, which we find in Luke chapter 19, because we find some similarities between these two passages. So what do we learn from this passage? Firstly, through the passage, we can rightly imagine that Levi may have been in tremendous pain for being ostracized from the community just because of his profession or livelihood. He also may have heard about Jesus, who forgives and reconciles the sinners back to the community. Hence, the words of Jesus, "Follow me," had life-changing impact on him. There was no wasting of time. The reception of call of Jesus was immediate. A point for us to reflect: do I recognize the call of God and answer it promptly or quickly? Secondly, Matthew later in his Gospel in chapter 13 verses 45 and 46 narrates the parable of Jesus on the merchant, in which he says, when the merchant finds a precious pearl of great value, he goes and sells everything he has and buys that precious pearl. So also Matthew had wealth, luxurious living, occupation, but when he finds the pearl of greater value, he acquires it with all his might and desire. A question for us to ponder: have I found the precious pearl in my life? Lastly, when Jesus called Matthew, there was a purpose. He was called to be the apostle. Apostle means to be sent out to proclaim the good news. Matthew preaches his experience of Jesus skillfully through his gospel. He hands over to the church his precious pearl, the gospel. Matthew makes use of his knowledge and writing ability for the proclamation of the gospel. Today, even after 2000 years, we too share in the benefit which Matthew found in Jesus. Millions of people over the centuries have been introduced to the life and ministry of Jesus through the gospel. A point for us to reflect: do I make use of my gifts for the good of the church and society, for the proclamation of the gospel?